Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Holding Court with the Empress of WeHo. My name's Enoch Miller, your Empress of West Hollywood, and we want to give a special thank you to our sponsors here today for Gaylifela.com and White Rabbit Partners for this amazing studio you see today. We are very honored to have trans activist and editor-in-chief of Wear Your Voice magazine, Ashlee Marie Preston. Hi Ashlee, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you. You do a lot for who you are as an individual, and I'm just going to read off a couple of things. Well, more than a lot of the things that you do. You're an entrepreneur, you're a media public figure, executive producer, PR consultant, diversity speaker, media advocate, philanthropist, and then also now editor-in-chief of Wear Your Voice. What is it like to be Ashlee Marie Preston with all these different hats that you wear?
That's a good question, one that I've actually been trying to figure out for quite some time when I'm evaluating how I'm going to be intentional about self-care.
Yes.
And I think after a while, each one of those roles and identities just becomes deeply embedded in who I am. And I think at the end of the day, I'm just really grateful that coming from where I come from, I now have these platforms to make a huge contribution to society at large.
So would you say your first and foremost passion as you as Ashlee is being a trans activist?
Without question.
Okay. And really just kind of going way back to the very beginning, right all the way back in Louisville, Kentucky, where you were born. Were you born directly in Louisville or in a suburb of the
I was actually born in Louisville. So
okay.
Louisville's like the Los Angeles of Kentucky.
Nice.
So, yes.
So it's the classy part.
Yeah. Swag.
And so you officially discovered your identity officially at 19. And where it was you were officially Ashlee Marie Preston.
I decided to live in my truth at 19.
Your truth, right.
I have a unique story in that at 9 years old, I actually started developing breast and kind of this weird kind of biological thing happened.
Okay.
And I remember trying to hide that and trying to wear big sweaters and trying to overcompensate for the femininity and the features and all of that. So, but when I left, then I didn't really have those, I didn't have the pressure.
Yeah. And I would love for you to just kind of give, because what I feel is our community, especially the LGBTQ part of it, really doesn't understand or give enough respect to what it means to be a transgender individual, because they either don't understand or they just can't comprehend what it actually means. Because even though we have a lot of the same struggles, it is not at all the same type of story for you discovering an identity that really is becoming your, like you said, your truth and who you really are. Could you kind of give some people an education on really what it means to be a trans individual?
I don't know that there's one textbook definition, because we all come with different identities. Like, prime example, many people don't recognize that gender identity and sexual orientation are two separate things. Gender identity is who I go to bed as, and my orientation is who I go to bed with.
Got it.
So I think that many have the false idea that, well, trans people are still gay.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot. And I actually saw a video with a girl named Elle, and it was actually her and her boyfriend talking about how they're actually a straight couple. He's not dating a girl that used to be a man. She is a woman. He is dating a woman, and he is a straight man dating a woman. And a lot of people do not comprehend that, because they're like, no, it's all this other stuff. They're still, like you said, they're mixing the identity with the actual who that person is with their gender role, and it's completely different. And so what was the defining moment for you, or is there really one that was like, you know what, this is who I am, this is my truth, this is who my individuality is, and you finally accepted that?
I don't know that there was a defining moment. I just remember one day saying, you know what, I'm just going to be intentional about dressing in a way that expresses who I know that I am. And it became second nature. I had probably a little bit of an easier transition than some, because I always had this androgynous look about me.
Okay.
So there was definitely some passing privilege there.
And I really like, because you've been quoted saying this, and I love what it's saying, because it's honestly, it's the truth. I am who I am, and I've always been. The world struggles more with my identity more than I do. And I feel that, I mean, for really just someone to just accept themselves. I really love that that was your story, and it's actually just really inspiring to see someone that's like, I've never had a real issue with it because it's really just it's me, it's who I am. And what do you feel that you see maybe today with a lot of young trans individuals or people that might genderqueer nonconformists that maybe not be sure if they're a trans individual or not? What would you say to them to kind of maybe either give them some advice or just kind of some direction to say, hey, here's how you can kind of really discover if this is who you are?
Own every bit of who you are. Don't try to fit into a box.
Got it.
Because there's this long spectrum of gender identity and orientation, and people feel that there's this checklist. Like, okay, I like these kind of people, check. I want to wear these kind of clothes, check.
Got it.
And it's like, Kentucky, 1996, we didn't have a word for trans identity.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean? I didn't know what a transgender person was, you know? And so...
You just knew who you were.
Yeah. And so my advice would be to not compare your insides to other people's outsides.
Oh, then that's an amazing thing to say. It's really... And then that's what I hear a lot of individuals that I've talked to, and a lot of friends that said, it's who I am inside. It's who I am as an individual. It's not about all this facade. Because, I mean, I love also, too, what RuPaul says. It's, you are, and the rest is drag. And everything we wear is something different and a facade of what we potentially are. It's really, the truth is, like you said, it's inside you. So then you left Kentucky, right about, you said, 1920, roughly, about that time-ish.
Yeah.
And then did you go straight to LA, or was there kind of anything in between?
I came to Long Beach, actually.
Long Beach, okay.
And I had this roommate that was very interesting. And later, through my own experiences, I would realize that he was a meth addict, and that's why he was crazy. And I went up to Sacramento to, I have an uncle up there who I had actually never met.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the Art and Fair area, and I was working at Foot Action USA in the mall as an assistant manager, and I just remember thinking, what is this? This is like West Coast Kentucky, and I'm not about it. So I did end up coming back down to Los Angeles, and when I came back down to Los Angeles, that was when I made the decision.
And so when you came back to LA, was your intention to come back to this area for like the West Hollywood, kind of the LGBTQ area? So you specifically intended to come to around here.
Yes.
Was it to find the community you were kind of searching for, or what kind of really drew you here?
I wanted to observe.
Observe, got it.
I'm one of these kind of people where I don't simply jump into any community for the sake of saying like, oh, this is... I like to watch and see how people operate, to see kind of like how people express themselves, and then based on my observations, then I decide if that's what I want to be a part of.
Fantastic.
And so one of the interesting things is that I remember going to some of the gay clubs and just realizing that, okay, like they're great and they're fun, but I could never see myself sleeping with a man,
right?
As someone who is male bodied or who expresses themselves as male. It just didn't feel right for me.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like some of the men that I would meet felt the same way, because they would see me aesthetically and think like, oh, you know, they're attractive. But then when I opened my mouth, it was like, oh, sis. Like, you know, it was like, okay. You know,
my girl.
No. They're like, let's be honest. No. So I think that was what it was, but that's any 19-year-old.
Well, yeah,
that's
exactly.
anyone who's ever lived most of their life being told what the expectations are for other people.
Right.
And then you're in that place where you get to make those decisions.
Right. And I think that's probably the hardest part, too, is really, like you said, I love the fact that you step back, you observe, you kind of don't just rush into it, and it really probably helps spare you any kind of either heartache or just emotional drama of the LGBT community around here that sometimes comes with a lot of people rushing into to find an identity or find a group or a niche and really not figuring out who they really want to be a part of. And it's actually a really smart thing to have people pay attention to. Cause,
it's how I discovered the trans community.
Oh, and so actually I'd love to talk about, so how did you, what was kind of maybe the first point where you really were like, not before you started activism, but really was like, this is how I want to be a part of the trans community?
I didn't know that it was an option.
Got it.
And so I didn't know that. I just felt like it was one of those things that, okay, I got the crap end of the biological stick, and I just have to work with what I got.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember seeing these beautiful girls sometimes, and they were so beautiful that they almost look like cartoons, kind of.
Yeah.
And there was this kind of like this thing about their spirit, like this glint in their eyes, that I knew there was something, and then having friends go, very inappropriate now that I look back, but they're like, you know, that's a man, like, you know, and I'm like, no.
Like them kind of making was it more like a snide thing of
they were detracting from their beauty and their
it.
expression, and they were just simply just being messy. In fact, personally, I can say that I've had more transphobia and discrimination from within the LGBTQ community
I can
than
guarantee
even
that.
the cisgender heteronormative community.
No, and I completely agree, and that's honestly what's really sad to see a lot of times is that they're treated. Basically, the trans community is treated like the redheaded stepchild of the LGBT community, and they're
we're props.
Or exactly.
You know, like, we're not all RuPaul's Drag Race contestants.
Exactly.
You know, no shade to, you know, but it is what it is. Like, we're not, and oftentimes we're either there to make people laugh.
Right.
We're there as the butt of the joke, or we're there for people to kind of abuse because they can't address their own internalized homophobia.
Exactly.
And so they think that the transgender community is a bad representation of the LGBTQ community at large.
Well, and I've also, like what you said before, is actually, if people really think about it, you guys were there at the forefront of it all as the trans community working towards LGBT rights and equal representation.
Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, many, many amazing trans people that were just beginning to learn their stories.
Exactly.
And I think that it's so interesting that there's been this erasure of the contributions that we've made to the community at large, and it's unfortunate.
And you are right. I mean, it's I feel like the LGBTQ community does kind of look down on the transgender community as it, like you said, they're kind of like the butt of the joke, and really it's not. It's you guys are the ones that actually power through the majority of the discrimination that we don't even really pay attention to, because we're just like, oh, we're just gay, and it's like, no, it's no more to that.
Well, it's also there's this sort of meritocracy involved, where it's like, well, I'm lesbian, I'm gay, I'm, you know, I can't even say bi because there's also bi erasure. There's all of these mainstream. So usually lesbian and gay saying, you know, well, we made it, we're doing good, why can't you?
Right.
And it's like, okay, but look at what we did to get to where we are, and how you're benefiting from the work that the trans community has done historically and continues to do.
Right.
And so I think that when they take a step back and realize that trans issues carry their own challenges, and that it's not so as simple as, you know.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the trans community has twice the amount of work in order to actually get people to understand who they are, who the community is about.
That is absolutely correct.
And we have half the battle, quite frankly.
That's absolutely correct. And the reason that is because we're not taking the time to explore intersectional identities.
Right.
So it's not just, like, prime example, right now, and I know we'll probably talk about that later, since the Caitlyn Jenner thing, there's a rift in the transgender community between white trans women and trans women of color.
Right.
Because white trans women, if it weren't for their trans identity, they would still have the same full access to male white privilege.
No, exactly.
And even still yet, whiteness is always going to trump. Oh God, I can't say that word anymore. It's always going to supersede gender.
Yeah. No, I get it, because it's honestly it's an issue that's been around for hundreds if not thousands of years.
But when you're talking about Black trans women, you're talking about race.
Right.
You know, some of your issues, the little that some of them have, began when they transitioned.
Right. Exactly.
Our issues began the moment I left the womb.
Right.
Because of my skin and because of stigma and because of the world's idea of who Black people are and where they fit into society.
And I've actually Marquita Thomas with the LAGLCC. She talks about how it was easier for her to come out as a lesbian woman because she'd already had dealt with the stigma of being a black woman first, and it's very much true with people of color that they don't usually have as much of an issue with either the gay, the lesbian, the transgender, anything with that, because they've already dealt with the stigma, like you said, since birth. And going to like something that's near and dear to your heart, I know Black Lives Matter and the work you've done with the Black community. What do you feel has been the biggest struggle for that part of the community that also ties into the transgender community?
Are you specifically talking about the African American community? I think that what happens is that many of us don't recognize when we're being weaponized against one another as tools of white supremacy.
Got it.
So when we talk about white supremacy, often what happens is people get in their feelings.
Well, right.
And they're like, well, I'm not racist, and I'm not, this, and they center everything that's coming out of our mouths around themselves.
Right.
When we talk about white supremacy, we're not talking about you as a white person.
Right.
We're talking about the system that has oppressed, marginalized people for
forever.
Oh my God, forever.
Yeah, forever.
And the ways in which that system is still operating within the world and how people continue to benefit from it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, going back to the slavery, you have the field slave, house slave dynamic.
Right.
Where one is kind of given a false sense of privilege and a little bit more access than the other. And so they're saying you can have this and maybe even a little bit more if you just keep them in their place.
Got it.
Even when you looked at, people have these images of like white people like whipping black people.
Right.
And while that did happen, some of the overseers who administered the punishment were actually other black people.
Well, exactly.
And so we've carried that framework and that system of conquer and divide.
Got it.
And we've planted that seed in 2017. Or it was planted then, but it's continued to grow and thrive. And we're now trying to figure out ways that we can cut it at the root. So a lot of my issues, again, when I talk about discrimination and transphobia, it's not only been people within the LGBTQ community, but it's actually been African American people.
Right. Got it.
And a lot of it is because of the fact that when you're already an oppressed group of people and you're already fighting to have validity and worth and trying to go up against that stigma, any sign of weakness or any sign of flaw,
they latch on.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And so there are many people that see trans women as a flaw, but my argument to that is I can't separate my gender from my ethnicity.
Right.
I am a black trans woman, and they can't be separated. So if you can't accept me as a black trans woman and you go out of your way to make my quality of life torturous, then you are really demonstrating a form of anti-blackness.
Yeah. And it's the truth, and it's that and I like the fact, the analogy you made of it. It's a continual seed of making. The best way to defeat a community is to defeat it from within itself. It's to pit other people against each other, and it's really interesting that you say that between even the transgender community itself, of how it's starting to get split between the white and the people of color, and the animosity that's been developing that, and you start to see that.
Well, Caitlyn Jenner, and again, I don't want to jump ahead, but she did that for the community because you can't access privilege you weren't invited to.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, whereas before white trans women were kind of seen as like, okay, these people, even trans women of color, they're going after these goals and these opportunities that aren't afforded to them.
Got it.
When those opportunities are afforded to the trans community, they're going to go to white trans women first.
Which makes sense.
And I think that it's really unfortunate because these people don't see that instead of trying to support someone that's not supporting your identity, we should be trying to figure out how we as a community can start to build so that we have resources to save ourselves and move forward and progress.
Exactly. And let's bring that up, since we've kind of mentioned it a couple times, because if anyone wants to watch or read the article or watch the video, you can go to gaylifela.com, and it's on the I think it's What's Happening Now or news. And you were at the Trans Chorus event that Caitlyn Jenner had showed up, and they accepted basically a donation from her. And your issue was the fact that, well, first of all, she supported Trump, and again, what he did against trans individuals in the armed forces, and not going out of his way to deny them the access to, well, first of all, support their freaking country, and if they're willing to serve and be there, why can we not support them as if they're wanting to go through gender reassignment or going through a transition?
Well, there's so many moving parts to that. Right. I think very top line, her attending that event the day after, not even 24 hours after that decision was made, was sought to an open wound.
Yeah.
Because whether you decided to, at the 45th time he spit in your face, you decided that you were going to say, oh no, I don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
We still have trauma.
Oh, exactly.
And
There's
lot
still
of
backlash.
Yeah. And we're the ones who feel it. You get to just scurry away to your beach house and live your own reality while we're in the trenches having to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the other piece to that, outside of her showing up to that space and really making it awkward, was that Caitlyn Jenner has become the Christopher Columbus of trans identity.
Okay.
She has... It's this weird kind of colonization that's happening where she's coming in and saying that, okay, these are what the issues are for our community, and yes, there is no we. Right. We're not in France. There is no we, because your agenda and your objectives are completely centered around monetary things, money. And with us, when we have somebody who's a public figure who can be drawing attention to these issues that matter, but instead they choose to make it financial, and it's an erasure of the experiences of trans people of color. And so at the end of the day, we need to stop fighting because there are other trans people of color that have had things to say, like about the way that I called her out, or, we all need to stick together. Here's the deal. Caitlyn Jenner does not care about the transgender community.
No, she cares about
not
herself.
One bit. And the fight that we're seeing is not for trans people. It is because she finally found a space where her money, her privilege, and her wealth were no good.
Yeah.
The GOP took her money. She gave all of this money to the GOP because her accrued male white privilege that carried over told her that, well, I done this, I'm going to have a seat on this administration.
Right.
And so when Donald Trump got her right together and did not extend her a seat with the administration and didn't give her all of the access that she thought she was going to have, she was stumped. She was floored.
Yeah.
She wasn't ready for that. She was not ready for that.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so now it's one of those things where, my friends in my other circles when I was the Olympian, that support's not there.
Right.
Now I traded in my own community for a seat with this administration, and that's not working. And they continue to just spit in my face publicly each and every turn, at every turn. And so now it's like, okay, well, now I'll be Caitlyn Jenner that creates a foundation that's supposed to be for trans people. Who are you serving with the foundation? And so she's trying to kind of find ways in which she can use the community as a capitalistic social experiment.
Oh wow, that's an amazing way to put it.
And an extension to the Kardashian brand.
Yeah,
she's trying to make us into an extension of the Kardashian brand.
Well, and quite frankly, I mean, you see that fully with the I am Caitlyn. I mean, to me that was the biggest joke of it all, because it's like you are publicly and I mean full front in everyone's face just throwing this out there, like just to, like you said, they're trying to. Oh, that's the perfect way to put it. Put it under the Kardashian brand. Gross. K. No more. But I really, if you ever want to go watch the video, it's a really great, just the way, because if anyone says you were, rude to her interface, you were very just point blank, direct. You were just explaining to her, this is how I feel. This is how I feel. First of all, you've just been disrespectful to the entire community and not done your due diligence as a transgender woman, regardless of what you think you're doing. And it was very just matter of fact to her, and that's just the favorite thing.
And exhausting.
Oh, this is exhausting.
Because you don't get to just run up and reach in your bra and throw the loose change at us and think that we're going to forget everything that's happened. And on top of it, the thing is that we have, girl, you got 2 seasons. I have friends at E Entertainment and all of that, and like other who works with that brand, and you've had 2 seasons to get it right.
Right.
They paid you to get it right.
Yeah.
And not only that, people have talked to you in different ways, and the cognitive dissonance is so real that you have to sometimes do something extreme to break through that.
Right. Well, and also, you see a lot of times in our interviews as well, it's just the things that will come out of her mouth. You're just sitting there going, like, did you really just say that is totally anti, not just the transgender community, but the entire LGBT community? When she told Ellen DeGeneres, I still feel that it's a between, that set me off, like, between a man and a woman. Like, because I'm sitting there like,
she did that.
It's just, it's every time you think you think someone's going to do what they need to do in order, or what they should do in order to kind of help this community as a whole, and they just go and do something like that, especially as such a public figure as that.
And I have to add, people say, well, Caitlyn can be who she wants to be. You can, but you don't get to capitalize off of the pain and oppression of a community that you don't represent.
Exactly, and that's the thing, is it's exactly right. It's like, stop thinking you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna be here to support, but no, you're trying to support. First of all, you're trying to financial gain and support yourself. You're not thinking of all this community. You're thinking, okay, this is my agenda. This is what I'm trying to get done. This is what I want to get for myself. And if they bring trans people along with it, okay, good for me.
Yeah, and to be clear, that call out, that was not, people say, well, if you want to educate to talk, that was not to educate, that was accountability.
That was,
that was me canceling her free trial.
Oh, no, I
her
agree.
free trial was canceled at that moment. It expired.
It expired.
Yes.
But that's the thing. You do not, everyday people do not get the opportunity to go, as much as they rant and rave on social media or online, no one ever really gets the opportunity to actually go up and say to someone's face, like, really, I feel a lot of people need to go up to someone's face and tell them exactly how you feel that they've done as again, injustice.
I have a social responsibility to do that, because what I recognize is, even being in media, being in these celebrity-oriented circles and spaces and the different boards, and I have a lot of affluent friends, and the thing is that because I'm at the table, I still have an agenda, and I know what I'm there for.
Right.
And I have friends who are white philanthropists, and like, they're really good people, and they looked around the room to make sure that there was a trans person of color there. So I feel like, as an activist, I have a social responsibility to really speak to the hearts of the community at large, not just my own personal interests.
Right.
And so for me, being in that space, knowing how people feel, seeing her, because what people don't know is, I wouldn't have come if I would have known Caitlyn was going to be there, because there was a presentation at City Hall that I was attending, and when I found out that she was going to be there,
I remember that.
I canceled.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to set the stage for that kind of thing. However, what makes me a little bit irritated is when people always tell oppressed people to respond to their oppression with kindness. Like, you should have said that nice, you should have, that, like, I don't understand that concept. Like, maybe you could have just said it this way, or you could have did it this way. It's like that all sides thing. Many sides. And it's like, no. How is it that you can check a black trans woman about how she liberates her community, but then you're not checking the people that are continuing to benefit from our oppression?
Right. And quite frankly, you were not rude, you were not loud, you were not mean. You were just matter of fact. You were like, I'm upset. This is why I'm upset.
And I tried to calm down. What got me together was when she said, are you done?
Oh, are you done?
No, are you done?
Oh, she did say, are you done?
And I was like, girl, you have no idea, sis. Sis, you have no idea.
The first one when she said, do you know who I am? And I'm like...
She said, you don't know
No, you don't know me. That's right, you don't know me.
And she couldn't even get it out because she knows it was bull, because the girls were snatching wigs. They came for me when I was friends with her, because the thing was that, here's my idea. This is how I see it. The same way she's finally found the courage to express who she is. She's been someone else for 60-something years.
Right.
Her political views and beliefs can evolve with her identity.
Right.
And that was how I saw it. I'm a part of a Democratic club. Why wouldn't... There were people that were like, she's a Republican. And it's like, here's the thing. I'm very objective or non-objective in my thinking.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to remove all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's this argument that, oh, she was saying that Caitlyn can't be Republican and transgender. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you don't get to constantly insert yourself in safe spaces that are designated for the people that are affected by your political efforts.
Exactly. Yeah.
You did this. We all have the right to be who we want to be, but we also have the right to face the consequences of our choices.
And that's consequences are key because they happen.
They're real.
And I want to go to it's so, first of all, this is so powerful because I love the fact that it's just like it's social injustice, and it's people being allowed to be mad. Again, don't go freaking ballistic, obviously, but you're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to be disappointed, you're allowed to be hurt, and you're allowed to express that. I mean, again, you did it in a calm, but you did it in a well-pronounced fashion to her that said, hey, I am unhappy with what you did. This made me upset. This is how I feel like you did me an injustice. And this is why, and I said, you were very matter of fact. And that's, watch the video. You'll see. Watch the fucking video. And I like to get, okay, because now we're going to get to the third part of this trifecta of Black woman, transgender, and woman. So, what you're doing now with the Wear Your Voice magazine, it's an amazing magazine. It's all about feminism and about women and the different things that you guys are working towards in order to really help the female community. And talk a little bit about how, as coming in an editor-in-chief, which was, first of all, an amazing accomplishment of being first, I think, first Black transgender woman as an editor-in-chief. What has your strides been to first of all the change in the feminist movement from what it was before to what it is now, and then your goals for the future with the magazine?
I think that many trans-identified people, sometimes we live in this bubble that, and understandably so, because we have to protect ourselves, and the world can be such a hostile, violent, dangerous place.
Oh, yeah.
But what happens is that when we burrow away in our safe spaces, we're missing opportunities to be a part of the conversation at large.
Right.
And one of my goals with coming into media, with writing, with coming into media, with doing campaigns and BuzzFeed and all these other things is so that I can familiarize people with trans narratives and identities and kind of generate conversation. Yeah. I believe that media at large has been complicit in the further marginalization of trans people and people of color, because society takes its social cues from what's presented via media.
Right. Oh, definitely.
And so if you're continuing to create these storylines and these and this messaging that puts us in a bad light and makes us the butt of the joke, or makes, Black women or these people aggressors, or makes us all of these things, you're contributing to the problem.
Right, exactly.
And so I realized that for me, I wanted to control some of that messaging.
Got it.
To steer some of that conversation. And I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in media. So bringing a trans voice, bringing the voice of a woman of color, and kind of facilitating that change and that transition. So Wear Your Voice, I met Ravneet Vora through a friend, Amita Swadeen, who I'm on her board for Mirror Memoirs, for survivors of queer and trans people of color who are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Got it.
And so Amita was like, there's this amazing friend that I have, and she's doing a lot of great work. She's a South Asian woman, and she has a publication, and I think you'd be interested.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I set up a meeting with Ravneet, and it was one of those, I don't know, there was this synergy.
Everything clicked?
Yes. Yeah. From the time she is just as her energy's all over the place like mine, and she's so expressive, and we were supposed to just have a 30-minute to an hour meeting to kind of talk about what she's doing and how I could just support her.
Got it.
Or give her feedback.
Got it.
And it ended up going for 8 hours.
Oh my God.
8 hours.
Wow.
And we were dissecting all of these different barriers and challenges and identifying what areas of opportunity we have to push the feminist movement forward and all of these different pieces. And before the end of the week, I was offered the role as editor-in-chief.
Wow.
And there definitely was a lot of historical a conversation. There was conversation around how that historically made me the first trans woman to be editor-in-chief of a national publication, and like what that meant, and where your voice is unique because it is. It's based on the work of Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term intersectional feminism, because feminism says women deserve equal pay as men. And that's where it ends.
That's where it ends. Okay.
Intersectional feminism says women deserve more, just as much pay as men. Also, black women deserve to get paid just as much as white women.
Got it.
Also, and so there's this domino effect of issues that don't stop at equal pay.
Got it.
And so what happens is that as a woman, I'm going to have a certain level of discrimination that comes with that.
Right.
Being black is going to have separate issues that come with that. Being a trans woman is going to have its own issues.
Right.
So you take 3 of the most marginalized identities within America and you wrap them into one identity. It's almost like
it's the perfect storm.
Hurricane Irma, taking all of these and combining Harvey and combining them.
Yeah.
And so that's what Where Your Voice does, is it dissects some of those issues and it takes a look at the world through news, pop culture, think pieces, and it takes a look at it through the lens of an intersectional feminist, someone who has more issues to deal with outside of equal pay.
Oh, and that's the truth too, because it's like you really, I mean, it doesn't just stop at equal pay, and that's what always confused me about feminism a lot of times, because it's like I'd hear a lot of these women talk about, oh, it's equal pay, and I'm like, yeah, but don't you guys deal with a lot more issues than just equal pay? I mean, that can't be the only thing the feminist movement has to be dealing with. It has to be probably, I mean, again, women treated differently just in general in the workplace or out in public than men do. I mean, that's a whole nother issue in itself.
Also bringing it back full circle, there's also this, I don't know how people have come up with this, but I'm a gay white man, so I can't be racist. What does that have to do with, I'm a feminist, so I can't be racist. I can't be, and the thing is that
that's so funny.
The feminist movement was started at a time where people were still being discriminated against, and people, I mean, we had even not even fully come out of like segregation in a lot of the country, and so these people that were like these like large figures within that movement still had some opportunities to maybe show up for black women and women of color and Asian women and, you know, Middle Eastern, they had those opportunities, and to be honest with you, they can only focus on the issues that affected them directly.
Got it. And it's true. I mean, it's really, they kind of stuck with it, and quite frankly, it does happen that way. It does, you hear so much, it's just, it stops at that one aspect of the movement, and it really isn't. And I have to ask so many other people, like going, you've got to explain this to me, because I know it has to be more than this, and this is all I'm hearing, and this can't be it. And
feminism without intersectionality is not feminism.
And I love that idea that again, the concept that she brought into it of saying that it's intersectional, because that makes so much more sense as to really what the feminist movement truly is. It's not just equal pay. It's so
all
much
women.
More. Exactly.
It's all women. And whenever you're only looking at the issues that affect white women, you aren't.
Oh, it does again. You've got, there's so many different issues for black women, for, like you said, for trans women, for Asian, for Mexican, for all these other people have different issues per their different ethnicity, subset, whatever else is included into that, and you've got to take into account all these different things, because again, it's like what we say with anything, with either black or white, trans or LGBT. I mean, it's every aspect of it has its own set of issues, and it's different from the primary issues, obviously, but it's always different, and you've got to like dig deep and really pay attention to this. And I really love that idea of what you guys do.
Well, I thought the conversation was interesting because Twitter dragged me. Twitter came for me, and if you look at those comments, they were primarily coming from white feminists. They were like, Ravneet, how can you make a man editor-in-chief? There's something historical about a man running a publication.
First of all, you're not a man.
And then the pieces where, well, no, can you have kids? No. There are cisgender women who cannot have kids.
Yeah, I mean,
who do
adoption.
not have reproductive. Yeah, I mean, so what does that make me less of a woman? Because, and then again, too, well, you weren't born a woman. Nobody was born a woman. You weren't born with a gift card to Bath and Body Works or whatever the hell. You were born female, but you weren't born a woman. So gender and sex are completely two different things, and so really having to go back. I mean, I really had to give them Magic School Bus. Like, I'm like, why are you
reading
children,
Rainbow? The more you know.
Right? Why are the children not aware?
Right.
Like what? But then again, we have.
But I think I love the fact that, again, I think she did such a smart job in bringing you on board for that conversation. And when you don't have someone that's there to actually explain the conversation never happens, and it gets overlooked.
And that was really what Ravita and I talked about, is that she told me how she used to thumb through these magazines as a kid, and recognizing that she didn't see other brown girls like her. So when we're talking about beauty, when we're talking about worth and desire and validity, it was one note. South Asian women were not a part of that
Exactly.
It was one note. And so if we want to be that, we all need to conform to whiteness to the best of our ability, because that's what beauty is. That's what validity is. And so she went through the fashion industry, did all of that, and really started like working her way in. But then she remembered those moments as a kid, and she was like, well, I kind of want to still change that conversation. And when she had her firstborn, her daughter, she was like, okay, I don't want my daughter living in that world. Me as a trans woman, I didn't see trans women like myself on TV, because if I did, I wouldn't have had to try to find myself through drugs, through other people, through all of those. And
well, and quite honestly, like you said, back in the 90s, where there wasn't really I don't think there was any representation, if not even a decent representation, of transgender men and women in the media at any time.
Well, even now, one of the most amazing, and I love Laverne, and definitely she has added so much to the conversation, even with the work that she's done around collecting data for trans identity, so that we can look at programs from a federal level. Her character is a trans woman in prison.
Right.
There's still this...
It's the stereotype already kind of being... And I think again, I don't know if this is like an actual true representation, but I feel like Transparent was actually one of the few shows that did I think, a fairly good job of really kind of addressing the trans community, and not a comedic way, and not a weird way, and a pretty, I mean, I guess a pretty, well, I'm not going to say normal, but I mean, again, normal for trans individuals. What would you say about a show like that? Did that really give true representation to the trans community?
I think Transparent definitely gave the conversation more dimension.
Got it. Okay.
It wasn't just about like, okay, they're like wearing a dress and you should let her use the bathroom. It was, well, first and foremost, it's based off of like Jill Soloway's experiences and family dynamic and things like that. Right. And it really kind of told our story through the lens of a trans person.
Got it.
Because these aren't, however, there are still many issues outside of that. And there's nothing, when we talk about, even as a Black trans woman, telling our stories and creating space for us to do that, that doesn't mean that no one else can have their experience or their, so that was the dynamic in Jill's family, and I think that she's done a masterful job.
Well, it was one aspect. Again, it was one aspect of it, and I feel like, again, it's never easy to always give every person a specific voice. I mean, especially in media, because you got so many, you know how it is, you got so much red tape to go through all the time with trying to get something even produced.
I will say really quick, one of the things that I did like about Transparent, I have a lot of friends that I like Trace Lissette and like a few of the, they did such an amazing job and brought so much to that screen, because these are parts of their real life.
Oh, yeah.
And so what Transparent did that was revolutionary, essentially, was give trans people the opportunity to tell their own story.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so there's something to be, people talked about back in the day, doing blackface, you know. Well, there's also transface, people having, and I'm not going to go to so much into, but there are trans actors and actresses who are skilled and talented
Right.
and who still have a story, and they should be given those opportunities
Right.
to
express that and show it.
right,
Yeah.
and to have some kind of economic stability.
Yeah.
Pay them what they're worth.
Exactly.
You know, they're there and they deserve that opportunity.
Yeah. And again, it's what I love about, just first of all, your perspective is the fact that you give us not just, again, transgender as a whole, but you give us just the in-depth underlying issues that really aren't being addressed, that people aren't really paying attention, that need to be paid more attention to. And if anyone wants to follow Ashlee, you can look at her lower third. It has all her social feeds on there. Go to Wear Your Voice magazine.
Come prepared.
Yeah, come prepared.
Come prepared.
Yes.
Because I talk about all.
But the great thing about it is the fact that you do talk about it all. There, I mean, in a very good way of me saying this, there is no filter, which is what people need to hear. And honestly, it will give you a really great education about really what is going on, not just the trans community, not just the women feminist movement, but also what's going on in the African American community and everything in between. So go to, is it wearyourmagazine.com?
It's Wear Your Voice.
Wearyourvoice.com
or wearyourvoicemag.com. They
Got it.
both go there. And I think also, with allyship and reading all of that, share it with your friends.
Exactly.
Because one of the biggest things that kills me is when people ask me, how can I be a better ally?
Right.
But then I go to your Facebook page
And you see all
and
the
I
mess.
see Catty Queen saying all this transphobic
Yeah.
stuff, saying anti-black stuff,
Right.
and then it goes unchecked.
Right.
Don't ask how you can be a better ally unless you're willing to look
Yeah.
adversity in the face and challenge
Yeah.
it.
And always, I mean, if you guys don't have an idea of what to say or what to do, or honestly, if you have questions, find a friend or reach out.
Google. Okay, we need to stop playing. Google. That you know how to find that little black dress you've been wanting for the last 2 years.
Exactly.
You know how to find out where they are going to show your favorite movie. You know how to find out. Google is a powerful tool.
Yeah, research.
Use it.
Do your research. I mean, honestly, what I did to find out really how a trans person actually comes to their identity, finds who they are, and goes through the process of maybe transitioning or discovering their true self. I found a friend and had her sit me down, talk me through it, and really explain to me and really open my eyes and educate me. And also, for if you are any business owners, go and talk to the LGBT Center, Drian Juarez. I mean, she has an amazing program and an amazing presentation on how to hire and to work with trans individuals for employment. So that's an amazing program that they do.
And a friend of mine, Michaela Mendelson, I'm actually on her board. She created an organization called Trans Can Work.
Okay.
And so what it is she owns these chain of El Pollo Loco restaurants.
Oh, okay.
And she's employed trans people.
Oh, fantastic.
And she actually, there's like trainings that she carries across the U.S. to inform employers on how to address trans identity, people transitioning on the job, what to say, what not to say,
Right.
how to make it
It's
a
the
safe
appropriate,
environment.
the appropriate conversation in a safer environment. And honestly, I know a lot of people, especially in Southern California, are very aware of that and do their job. And a lot of especially West Hollywood too, we do try to make sure that we make everyone feel welcome as much as possible because we love our brothers and sisters no matter who the fuck they are.
And make it priority.
Yes.
Because to be honest with you, I think that one of the biggest challenges is that when marriage equality happened, girls took their flags and their wedding bands and went the fuck home.
Yep.
And not realizing that there were still many of us who were still suffering and struggling.
That's
and
true.
so
The
the
fight
thing
isn't
is,
over.
I see the community, I guess, in wrapping up as like this like fortress, this
Yeah.
castle. And each part of the acronym represents a wall.
I agree.
And if you let the outside forces attack the T-wall
Right.
and thinking that it's not going to affect you,
Yeah.
once they gain access through that,
Yeah. They come after the rest of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is what happens. And so the thing is that if you attack one,
You attack all.
all.
Exactly. Well, and thank you so much, Ashlee, for being here today. I really appreciate, first of all, the insight you give, but also it's the fact that it's just your bluntness, and that's what I really appreciate. And amazing as well. Lovely
Thank you.
woman. So thank you guys so much again for tuning in today. We really appreciate your support. And like I said, go check out their website for wearyourmag.com and also Wear Your Voice Mag.
WYV. But
Tell
I
your
say,
voice.
and we also say WYV. I think that's just the just like
I just think wear your voice.
Weave off.
Weave off. There you go. Perfect. There you go. And then also you can always check out our sponsors, Gaylifela.com and White Rabbit Partners. We really want to thank them again for the opportunity to be here and to have this platform. Thank you so much. Tune in next week, and we really look forward to seeing you. Bye.